There's a story about, and it's so random, Devin Haney. Devin the Dream Haney. Now, there's a two-part story. He's actually in the news this week. De La Hoya's calling him out, him and his dad being like the worst tandem in boxing. And, he also signed a deal this week to fight in May against Jose Ramirez, a former champion, and Ryan Garcia going to be on the same card with Rolly Romero. So Turki Al-Sheikh, His Excellency, is making that fight happen. And for Devin Haney to get the rematch with Ryan Garcia, he has to beat Ramirez. And Jose Ramirez is no punk. We've interviewed Jose, former champ, like we said. So Devin Haney in the news because he is getting that opportunity, and that is a pretty good fight card for the real fight fan.
But if you want to know the real reason Devin Haney's name is anywhere today,
all people,
is because he called out Sylvester Stallone, Rocky Balboa.
Well,
don't act like he's in the news because he's fighting Ramirez.
No.
He's in the news because he called out Balboa.
I said he's in the news for multiple things this week, right? So that happened this week. But he also called out Sly Stallone.
So, Sly, what happened? Sly's on social media.
Sly, I believe this was from, I don't know if it's a random social media clip. I think it's from one of his documentaries because I feel like I've seen him do this or say this before. But you know how he goes into his rants and like, these are like, would you tell it, what is it you said to the kid? Life is not like all sunshine and rainbows, like you got to get up. You got to get tough, kid. You know how he just gets in all his rants? He starts talking about and these are the boxing gloves I used to use back in the day. These are Reyes boxing gloves. And you know what? He's like, they're a lot lighter than gloves today because, quite frankly, we used to be a lot tougher back then. Right? Look, if you want to take a listen, here you go.
They don't even allow these today because they're so dangerous. But that's what they used when I did the film. They're barely 6 ounces. They're Reyes. And they're literally lethal. So I still have them because it's a time when people were tougher. Sorry, they were. Life is just getting a little easier and easier and easier. And, that's great. It's wonderful, but it's not. I think when we force ourselves into tough situations, that's what the human creature is supposed to do.
And what is it that you're teaching the kid when you make life easy? Life's supposed to be struggles, absolutely. So he's doing his whole Rocky thing about how people were tougher back in the day. And look at the boxing gloves we used to use. These are the ones I used in Rocky. That's all. He's just prideful of all his memorabilia. Devin Haney goes to social media, and he goes, dude don't know a left hook from a fish hook, and got the nerve to speak on times being easier in boxing like he wasn't just an actor. Buddy, them Rocky movies wasn't real.
How dare he?
That's still actually, I didn't see Stallone reply, but he's a fight fan, so I'm sure he saw it by now. I was just talking about the movie, absolutely. But he got so much backlash, Devin Haney, right? Because there's so many Rocky fans out there, and there's so many haters of Devin Haney.
And who doesn't love Stallone, right?
And who doesn't love Stallone? That Devin Haney did, I just got to give him credit. He did respond back and say, Sylvester Stallone is a legend, and I have nothing but love for the whole Rocky series just because he didn't want that heat. He gets enough heat. But he did come at Stallone. But it does make you wonder. Stallone, he's done 9 movies. He always includes professionals in all of his movies. Former athletes are pretty standard in all of his movies. He's got fighters in The Expendables, UFC fighters in The Expendables. Yeah. He's got real boxers in all the Rocky movies. Got choreographers. He's a fan. Rocky was inspired by a Muhammad Ali Chuck Wepner fight he watched. He was there. He's been a lifelong fan. You don't think Rocky, or Sylvester Stallone, I should say, has a pretty decent general knowledge of the fight game? I do.
I listen. I have a crazy take on this.
I've been in more fights than anybody. Absolutely.
I think if you play a fake version of something long enough, you're almost that. I bet you Mariska Hargitay
right,
is a better detective, Law and Order, than anyone that's not like an established detective. I bet you if you play a lawyer on a TV show for a decade, if you're playing a lawyer for years, you probably know more than anyone except an actual lawyer. Like if you fell and you're like, oh, I'm having a heart attack, do you rather a nobody try to help you or someone that played a doctor on TV for years? I'm not saying it's as good, But it's better. I bet you Stallone knows so much more about boxing
than the average guy, than the average actor.
99% of people.
Yeah.
What if the actor, Rich, just played that role in one big movie and they studied for it for that one film? Like, would you want Joe Pesci, representing you in court?
How about this, though? How
yes.
much training did Keanu Reeves do for John Wick? I'm not saying he could be an assassin of sorts, but
I don't know. Have you seen those videos?
Yeah, there's videos and stories about the extensive training that the guy did just to appear credible in that movie. So again, I hear what Rich is saying, but to back up Sylvester Stallone, look, I know he wasn't a professional fighter, and I'm not saying he could have been, but I'm saying I'm sure he knows a lot more than the average guy.
I'm going more
than
than
the
you.
average fight fan.
I'm going more than you because I feel when you dive into a character, you do end up knowing more than 99.9% of people.
You mentioned some lawyers and some doctors. There's no doubt about that they could pretend better than anyone else. They would know the jargon. They would know how to speak in that way where it would be convincing. Would I let George Clooney slice me open? No. But I would feel like he'd be able to pretend pretty well and put me at ease that he knew what he was talking about.
In our business, we've all known DJs who have pretended to be the program director for 10 years.
Absolutely, yeah. They've always pretended.
And guys, on these shows a lot, like Law and Order, SUV, Law and Order, SVU, I say SUV, Law and Order, whether they're firefighting shows, whatever, they usually have professional consultants on set to like people who really worked in the real world to give them advice, like make this more realistic.
Mark Paul Gosselaar, who's a friend of the show, Zach Morris, we've known Mark over the years.
And Mario Lopez.
AC Slater. What's up, Preppy? But he said when he was on that Fox show that only lasted like a season, remember Pitch, the female baseball pitcher?
Yeah.
I thought that was an entertaining show. I liked it. Mark Paul, not a baseball player, and they worked extensively with him, with professional athletes, making sure, like, dude, your fundamentals, your mechanics are off. You end up learning more than you'd think. Like, Iowa Sam's right. If it's a firefighting movie, they got legit firefighters on set being like, no, you're holding the fire hose
because
wrong
you're
way.
learning from the real people. That's not to undermine the real people that do this stuff, but when they're playing these roles, they're learning a lot of the times, most of the time, they're learning from people that actually do it. There's a professional on set. Another example, Rich, along with your Mark Paul Gosselaar one, a famous one, is the Charlie Sheen in Major League, how his fundamentals were improved from, just being able to throw hard to, wow, he may be able to pitch at a decent level if he stuck with it. He was throwing in the high 80s at the time, and this is before people were throwing 108 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Throwing the high 80s, 90s, that was a big deal back then. So, I don't want to say that Stallone is the be-all, end-all, but I think for Haney to come at him like that was a little awkward. I think Stallone knows a lot about boxing.
So,
especially after 9 movies about professional boxing.
The secondary question I have for you guys is, if you had to, the question is, I could fake the funk doing blank.
Right.
Like, do you think that if you dove into a profession that you knew nothing about, but you had, the ability to learn it for a little bit? Like, I think that that's why I think these actors, the acting is really the lone and best example of how if you play someone long enough.
You think Jim Carrey could have been a weatherman? Or an actual pet detective?
This is a big time stretch. But if someone that played.
Or a lawyer?
If someone that played a pilot.
Okay.
In a movie series or a show, like a military show or something, you don't think, like, I'm not saying they could fly a plane tomorrow. But if the pilot was like, and dies. And
you want that guy over.
Does someone on the plane know how to fly a plane? The pilot died.
Well, not a pilot, but I play one on TV. All right, well, good enough.
But I think the one that played one on TV is your best candidate.
He would know a little
Let's
more.
be clear. We're not saying these actors
no.
can do the job.
No, what Rich is saying is he would know a little more than the regular average fella just sitting there. And I actually do agree with that.
You know what this reminds me?
I wouldn't feel safe about it.
I was saying, if we were in a plane, the pilot and co-pilot, both passed out. They're like, who can fly this plane? And it was Iowa Sam or Tom Hanks who played Sully.
I would
I'd go with
I would say,
definitely
Tom,
say
take it away.
Tom Hanks could do anything, though. That's the great thing. But a lot of, and like you said, Keanu earlier, a lot of these actors do go on if they're in such a big project to learn that. Like I know Tom Cruise is a helicopter pilot. John Travolta's a actual pilot.
Yeah.
And a great dancer.
And a great dancer. But
And a great Santa Claus.
And a great yeah. They go
Doesn't
on
Harrison
to like
Ford also fly?
Yeah.
Harrison Ford is a
Learn for
pilot.
film, yeah.
He crashed one of his planes like 6-7 years
Right.
ago and stumbled out of
life
it.
imitates art, imitates
So
life.
when you are an actor, and it sounds stupid because not everyone takes it as serious as other actors, but they do develop a lot of skills. And you look at an actor's resume, they'll have it listed out of all the things they're kind of capable of because they've been trained or they learned for other parts. So to say that Stallone doesn't know a little something about boxing and the training involved and all the professionals he's worked with and fought against, right? He fought Mason the Lion Dixon, right? These are professional boxers.
You know,
He knows more than the average person.
I think that's why Devin Haney almost pulled back his original diss of Stallone by saying, you don't know the difference between a left hook and a fish hook? Because I think everyone went at Haney like, yo, Stallone's been a fight fan, part of the fight game, and while not a real fighter, he's synonymous with boxing that he knows way more than just some rando fan.
And he would always incorporate the real dudes in his movies, the Jim Lampleys. I already mentioned Antonio Tarver. You know, there was always some sort of professional element that he would try to bring into those movies. So it was a little bit of a out of nowhere disrespect because Stallone is sort of grandfathered in. Here's another reason why I thought so, as to at least be given some sort of respect in that world. You know how many fighters he inspired to actually get in the ring? You know how many fighters probably saw that movie or saw one of the movies and was like, yo, I think I want to do that.
I don't know. How many boxers have you think trained to the Rocky soundtrack?
That's what I'm saying. Like, for him to come at Stallone was weird.
Yeah, that's why I'm telling you. That's why he backpedaled quite a bit.
Covino, what's the worst in a boxing movie? What's the worst choreography you've ever seen in a boxing movie?
That's a good one. Let me think about that. You know, most of them are pretty decent. Like even the old Rockies are pretty kind of weak when you watch them from today's standards. Like the one with Jake Gyllenhaal. Which one was that? That was actually pretty
it was
good.
really good.
Yeah, it was really good. Like they've come a long way from then, is what I'm saying. But the worst.
By the way, if you had to get
Probably the one with Jerry. You ever see Jerry Lewis in the ring? When he's in the ring, you ever see which
Stop
one is
it.
that? Look that up.
Did you ever? All right, if you had to get in a race car,
Yeah.
like if you had to get in a street race, and it was like, hey, Joe Schmo or someone from Fast and the Furious, aren't you just being like, all right, I guess I'm with Vin Diesel because he
has to know a
he has to
little
know
something.
a little more.
A little something.
All right, so Mark Wahlberg and Boogie Nights.
If I had to become an exotic dancer,
You know what we'll do, Rich? Here's what we'll do. We're going to put this to the test. We may even interview a few actors at Super Bowl on Super Bowl week, right? Because you never know who stops by Radio Row, Super Bowl week in New Orleans. As part of our questioning, if they're an entertainer or an actor, because most of the people that stop by are NFL players, football players, and athletes. But if we have an actor on the show, we got to ask, what random skills do you have?
that you could fake it enough.
That you could fake it enough because you've played so many different roles, so many different parts.
And to answer Iowa Sam's question, the worst choreography in sports.
He said in a fight in
But
boxing.
it can go out to all sports. 'Cause some football movies too,
There's a famous scene.
and baseball movies.
There's a famous scene that gets ripped apart. People are in stitches laughing. There's like a high school girls basketball scene where the girl travels and the time clock is like, shot clock's like 5, 4, and then there's still like 20 seconds left in her little movements. Like,
Oh yeah,
whatever
the
that
timing
was.
never adds up.
I got to find out what show it's from, but
How
that
about this? In the movie Teen Wolf, I saw this speculated on before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Michael J. Fox, and he's a wolf, so you have to leave your brain at the door anyway.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Your brain
Right.
at the door.
So, but there's a scene where he's taking the foul shots, right? You know, at the end,
Yeah.
free throws.
and he's doing free throws, and his nemesis is standing right in front of him. Like, just looking at him. Like, under no circumstance in any game is the player standing in front of him.
Yeah,
that's not a part of the rules.
He's across from him.
He's
like,
the human wall at the Clippers' new arena.
Yeah, he's just like mean mugging him from across the way. It's like, that's not allowed. So anyway, Devin Haney in the news multiple times this week.